Thank you for joining me today. What we're doing today is something which I'm really proud about today. It's an event and an initiative that is really touching upon mental health and well-being, specifically to do with social care and those within social care. It's really interesting times, and I'm not sure if this was done on purpose. Some people might say that, but the notion of race inequality and the notion of race and well-being, talking about it, considering what's been going in the media. So I don't take any plaudits for doing it. It just happened to fall on this day. So thank you for joining me in regards to that. So first and foremost, so anyone, when you come in, my name is Dudley Sawyerr. I'm the chair supporting registered managers at London Care and Support Forum, LCAS, for over 15 London boroughs. I'm also the founder of Race Equality and Social Care Alliance, known as RESCA. The mission is to make race inclusive, not exclusive, to all those working and being served by social care sector, and really to help raise awareness of culture in social care. I'm also a consultant at People Care Services, servicing the social care sector, offering consultancy to ensure UK social care providers are compliant with CQC regulations and local authority guidelines, specialising to help organisations reach cultural change. And for me, this is really key in what we're doing today, is really looking at an initiative called Keeping Well. I'm just going to start with some housekeeping of really what is going to be taking place today, and before we start going. So housekeeping, first and foremost, just to let you know, so anyone, if they want to put their cameras down if they don't want to be recorded, this discussion is being recorded. And if you want, during the conversations and during the event, you can ask questions in the chat function. And then also as well, there'll be a Q&A just before the end of the session. And discussion on the session will be ending at 12:30. And so people will be made aware of what's going on. The agenda today and what we're looking at is an intro, which I'm going to start with. Then we're going to have a conversation with one of our guest speakers, Dame Elizabeth Anionwu, followed by Dr. Ellen Herolau from SLAM. Then we're going to have two speakers from social care, colleagues who are experiencing what they've experienced during the pandemic. And finally, some Q&As and feedback was also as well of what's been happening during this time. So I'd like to just really start and give the intro of what I'm going to start with. And I'm really going to just start by talking about the first speaker, the inspirational Dame Elizabeth Anionwu, a nurse, health visitor, tutor working with the Black community and minority and ethnic communities as well in London. The beginning of her journey was that she quoted saying, "People from diverse cultures are not always valued and still sometimes just seems as a problem." She became the United Kingdom's first sickle cell and thalassemia nurse specialist, whilst helping to establish in Brent the first nurse-led UK sickle and thalassemia screening and counselling centre. She did this whilst dealing with the British attitude towards the perceived stigma of race. Dame Elizabeth turned shame and prejudice into strength and service through her work in the NHS and social care. Later on in life, she was awarded the Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire in 2017. She's very, very proud of receiving a Pride of British Award Lifetime Achievement Award, the Pride of Britain Award Lifetime Achievement, where she probably will tell you is probably one of her proudest moments, where she was pictured and presented the award by Janet Jackson. She also was known as put on the list of BBC's 100 Women in 2020, and in Nursing Times Chief Nursing Officers UK Outstanding Lifetime Achievement Award. Before I actually get start of a conversation with Dame Elizabeth, I want to share a short video that really hit home of being a Black person working in health and social care sector, and I hope you can appreciate of what it's about. So if you just listen and then please and be welcome to this presentation.
of some of the staff was starting to get me down. The final straw was getting into trouble with the sister of a postnatal ward for becoming too involved without her permission. It concerned an older middle-class woman who was both depressed and struggling to breastfeed her baby. I spent some time at her bedside, successfully helping the baby to suckle at last. The mother was very exhausted, and her depression developed into the more severe mental illness of puerperal psychosis. She was transferred to a psychiatric unit in a different part of the city. After some time, her husband, a journalist, contacted me saying that his wife wanted to see me. I went and was delighted to see the improvement in her state of mind and how well she was bonding with her child. On my return to the hospital, I was summoned to see the ward sister and shocked when she gave me a dreadful dressing down. A friend of hers at the psychiatric unit had informed her of my visit. All I can remember her saying repeatedly was, "Just who do you think you are? Who gave you permission to visit her?" It seemed to be such a daft and unjust admonition that after her dismissal of my initial response concerning the husband's request, it seemed better to just keep quiet. Once out of her office, I struggled to stop the tears from running down my face and felt a sense of blackness surrounding me. There was no way that I wanted to continue my studies, and I decided to look into how to become a health visitor. The idea of working in the community and visiting families in their own homes to promote health appealed to me, much more than working in a hospital. In the meantime, continuing with French classes, I always wanted to improve my French. Continuing with French classes at the Institut Français helped to lessen my feelings of depression. One day I saw a small announcement on the notice board stating that a family living near Paris was seeking a person to speak English to their 2 children. My mind was made up. This would be my next move. Around the same time, while walking along the hospital corridor, the matron stopped me in my tracks. She asked me why I was looking so despondent, and lo and behold, the tears started flowing again. So she invited me to come to her office, and over a cup of tea asked me why I had changed so much from the cheerful student of 6 months ago. I was amazed that she even knew me, never mind the degree of sympathy and support she offered. So I just told her all my problems. Firstly, she said she would speak to the sister in question, as I had been quite right to visit the psychiatric unit. Then she proceeded to inquire about my future plans and promised to give me a reference when I applied to become a health visitor.
Thank you very much. As you can imagine, this has been a really helpful, powerful experience that I thought I would share. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dame Elizabeth Anionwu.
Thank you very much. Oops.
We can hear you, don't worry.
Good, thank you. Yeah, can I just say thank you though for the invite? I'm very honoured.
Okay, that you're welcome. It's really interesting because we're talking about well-being and mental health, and we're looking at the effect it's having or it's had on the Black, Asian and ethnic groups and workforce. You are someone who has had various experiences in your lifetime. So can you just give us an idea of what and how it started, basically?
Well, gosh, I did watch the programme last night. We all know which programme we're talking about, don't we? I don't need to.
We do.
And it reminds you how unexpectedly raw, traumatic memories can be brought to the fore. And the particular, the significant issue for me was the fact that I'm 73. So we have to go back to 1947 when my parents, who were not, they never married, they separate, but they were both at Cambridge University. They were students. And my mother got pregnant with me towards the end of her second year at Cambridge University, where she was studying classics. And she came from a strict, loving Catholic Irish heritage family. We're all into intersectionality.
Yes.
And I could give a master class. Oh no, we don't talk about master classes, do we? Come on, it's International Women's Day. I could give a class in intersectionality. I have to be honest, when I didn't pick up what intersectionality meant, it sort of started to appear in debates and publications. But when I actually looked up the definition of it, I thought, wow, yeah, this does make sense, because my mother couldn't bring herself to tell her parents she was pregnant. That's the first thing. It was my grandmother that realized when she came home on holiday and was measuring her up for a skirt. My mother, I think, was about 6 months pregnant. And so my grandmother said, "Are you pregnant?" My mother said, "Yes." Grandmother said, "Well, when were you going to tell us?" And my mother apparently said she wasn't going to tell them. She was going to go down to the local river, jump in to kill herself. She was so, well, you could remember in the context of just after the Second World War, in the Midlands, so few Black individuals in that era. There were, but very few. And so there was this whole issue of everybody's world apparently coming crashing down. My grandparents thought that their main issue was my mother being pregnant and not being married and wishing her to continue her studies. And everybody rallied around. My mother could not bring herself to add the extra information that the father of the baby was Black, Nigerian. So this is what struck me yesterday as I was watching the program and hearing the concerns about the color of the baby, what the concerns. It's not asking, about, I think people are trying to just, the word concern is the issue, the concern about what color the baby might be. So imagine then, my grandparents are coming to visit my mother after she's had me in a mother and baby home in Birmingham now. And it was run by Irish nuns, Catholic nuns. And the nun barred my grandparents from initially coming in to see us both because she wanted to prepare them. And she prepared them by saying, to be sure, the baby's a little dark. Yeah. So it's that sentence that I've grown up with. I mean, I was in children's home for 9 years, but my mother never, ever gave me up for adoption. Life was just very difficult for her. She couldn't provide a home for me until I was 9. Then there was physical abuse by my stepfather. Then my grandparents, this is all on the maternal side, rescued me. Let's fast forward. In the early 70s, it was an era very similar to what we're going through now in terms of Black Lives Matter. The late 60s, early 70s, I'd done my nurse training in London in 65 to 68. You've read a clip of me trying to do midwifery and being bullied. I mean, it was straightforward bullying and harassment I experienced at the hands of that midwifery sister, but rescued. There's a theme of rescue and support through my, I wrote my memoir, sorry, I should put that in context. And they're coming out again in September, revised, updated from when I wrote them. So really, I'm just trying to paint a picture that I grew up in a totally white environment, partly institutional care, partly family care, whatever. But all the way through, there was a link in terms of my brown skin. And I can't say that I faced the most awful racist behavior that we know individuals still experience today. I have received some, but not. But the story, the experience I do remember, which resonates with people who wish to feel that people accept them in their community, is as I was growing up, I would, and everybody knows this, but I want to just personalize it. So I'm stopped by this very nice, she seemed like a really old lady. She was probably about 30 or something, you know, I was really small. And she said, "Hello, my dear, where are you from?" And I said, "Birmingham." And I had a real Birmingham Brummie accent in those days. And all I remember was the wagging finger in front of my face. No, 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 no. And I really was scared. I'm thinking, what have I said wrong? No, 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 no. Where do you really come from? We all know, we know that. So that was me starting to feel denied of my origins, denied of my where I was born. And that sowed a seed in my child's mind, was I have to find out at some point where I am from. But I meant that by my heritage, my ethnic heritage. To cut a long story short, in 1972, I found my father within 3 days of looking for him. He was in London. He was actually based in Nigeria. But how lucky I was, because when I see the programs, Who Do You Think You Are and Long Lost Families,
yeah,
I found my father, and and knew him for 8 years before he died quite young. I went to Nigeria, met my Nigerian family. There was a few in London, but the bulk were in Nigeria. And all I can say was that sorted me out. That's the phrase I would use. It sorted me out in terms of all these uncertainties about being seen as other, outsider, inferior, stupid. I wasn't stupid. I mean, I know I'm not stupid, but you know, all this rubbish, and it is rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. When we dig into this is when well-being is the issue. And my life, I know I've had a good life, but I've had a good life because I've had people who have really helped me identify. I'll finish with this. What was the factor that changed me into seeking out my father? I told you about the wagging finger, but that just planted a seed at the back of my mind. I didn't do anything about it. It wasn't until I was in France. I lived in Paris for 9 months. I worked in Paris, and I got very friendly with a French Benin radical midwife. I mean, she was a midwife and she was radical. I loved her to bits, Paula. I told her the story about when I was in the children's home and I washed my face 10 times to become white. Oh, to try and become white, because I was the only Black child in the children's home in that era. And she said, "You know something, Elizabeth? You need to read Frantz Fanon's Black Skin, White Masks." Frantz Fanon was from Martinique, which was then a French colony when he was born, became part of France now. And he worked as a psychiatrist in, I think it was Tunisia, a large psychiatric hospital. And he was observing how brown-skinned individuals internalized self-hatred of their skin color because all around them, people who didn't have their skin color were treated better. Pretty straightforward. And but how it negatively implodes on individuals if they haven't got pride in who they are, regardless of what society says around them. And you know something, Dudley, that that book, to start with, is a little bit hard because it's quite theoretical to start with, but once you get into it, it really, that expression, scales off eyes, hey, that's what it's all about. And it really did blow my mind, actually. There are a few books that have had impact. I love reading that book. And even the title, Black Skin, White Masks. So that's what eventually, it took me a few years, but that's when I wrote to my mom and asked about my dad, and gradually I just calmed down. The anger is still there. You probably have sensed it. And I'll finish on this. I say that my anger has helped me because I've used my anger positively. I've channeled my anger into campaigns working with other people, sickle cell, Mary Seacole Statue campaign. You know, anger equals energy, and that energy can be negative or it can be positive. If it's negative, all of you know better than me the impact of negative energy turned into against yourself. I turn that. When people meet me, they if they don't know me, they think, oh, she's quite nice. She's got a sense of humor. She's quite intelligent. She seems to move around. She mixes in different groups. Blah 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 blah. It's when they press those buttons, and a little bit of what I heard last night in that interview started to press a few buttons, and then I started to think, don't get down, because that's the whole issue. What do you do when you start to feel, ooh? Yeah. And then I thought, can I say that this is a swear alert?
Yeah, everyone, just be very careful. Just everyone to close your eyes. We'll probably have to edit
basically, it's don't let the buggers get to you. That's all it is. Yeah. And we've got to have some ways of sort of hearing what our body is telling us, what our mind is telling us. And I wanted to sleep last night, and I did. I slept very well, by the way. So that's really, maybe I should finish.
So I mean, it's very interesting. Obviously, the clip that we showed, and obviously what you've expressed of partly of your life and what you've gone through. I think a question that we all are looking for, and partly of what's happened during the pandemic, is how people have coped. People have had to be resilient, but I always classify it as mental health and well-being is the ticking time bomb of the pandemic, because what's left afterwards will be a lot of broken minds and people who probably may have struggled and had to put up with things. So from your point of view, you've had to go through a lot during your lifetime, experiencing the stigma of your race and various things, and you've come through at the end of it. So in the clip we showed, I guess the question would be, what have you done? What did you do, or what did you do to cope with being any form of depression, anxiety, and probably maybe going into maybe a deeper mental health zone? I mean, the reason why I mention this is because we know as the Black, Asian, and sort of ethnic groups that it's a stigma around our necks. So how did you cope with it?
With this, are you talking about the current?
I'm talking during your life.
Oh, right.
During your life.
I've realized that I've developed what I call my toolbox. It's like it's an imaginary. It's not imaginary. But it's. I realized that I've pulled together. Some people will call them strategies, maybe. Mm-hmm. I think it's because I've read a lot. I'm very, very curious. And I'm particularly interested in, I'm very nosy. And I'm very interested in, why do certain people survive difficulties and others who seem to have everything just mess up? And it's a mixture of things, really. But so individuals like Nelson Mandela, you have to remember my age and the period I've come through. There's a cultural, historical, political context to everybody's life. So, but I was becoming interested in politics with a small p and the world around me and race, etc. in the late 60s. and 70s. So the speech, it wasn't a book, it was the speech of Nelson Mandela, The Long Road to Freedom.
Yeah.
And, you know, that sentence at the end, you know, if I have to die for it, for this cause, what? You know, I mean, that's, and I mean, he's so eloquent. And I couldn't understand how he didn't get angry. Well, he did get angry, didn't he? Because that's, you know, that's why he got into prison in a way. But you know what I mean? And then subsequently following, you know, his imprisonment, the whole campaign to free Nelson Mandela. My daughter tells a very interesting story of when she was quite young and we were shopping and she was trying to help me. And so she took a bag of oranges, and apparently I don't even remember this, and I have to be honest, what a terrible mother. I apparently tore the bag of oranges from her and threw them back because they had Cape Town, and you know, there was the whole boycott, and well, some of us boycott, and so it's you know, how strongly I felt that I needed to do my little bit to support this great guy, Nelson Mandela, you know, and I hadn't obviously explained it properly to my child, so it probably traumatized her a bit, you know, but I sat her down afterwards and explained. She did, we did talk about it. So anyway, the toolbox is a variety of things, music, so books, learning, trying to see, not to fall into the trap that people have felt. Never think you're too important. Never think, you know, it's weighing things up. It's trying to get the balance. You know, when life's very good, just realizing you don't know what's around the corner. Savor what you've got, savor what you're experiencing, and open the door and keep it ajar for others and help, because I couldn't have got where I've got to without all those people that have helped me. You know, writing my memoirs really helped me. I mean, I did know it, but actually, you know, people, so helping individuals and acknowledging the support that you're getting. And actually it can be from people you don't expect the support from. I think it's trying not to be too, not allowing stereotypical assumptions that society have sort of inculcated you with without knowing or knowing it, and not allowing them to continuously interfere with how you want to behave. And that's difficult sometimes, because we're all human. We've all got our strengths. We've all got our weaknesses. You know, that's what makes human life so interesting, but it can make it very traumatic and desperate as well. Music is absolutely one of the most important. Books, music, people, first of all, people, books, music. Music, if I can give you a couple of examples, taken from how news during this pandemic can dampen your spirits, to musicians, singers who I've absolutely adored. Toots Hibbert, Mr. Hibbert, he died recently of COVID in Jamaica. And then the recent death, I'm not saying it was to do with the pandemic, but the whole issue of death and dying is affecting all of us at the moment. My brain has gone now, this is age. Who can help me with the Black Heart Man? Come on, this is a test for out there. Black Heart Man.
Black Heart Man who died recently.
I had the LP out recently. Anyway,
we'll come back to you for that one. Now you've challenged us as the audience.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they let people help me out with that.
Please, if they know of this this black
Bunny Wailer. Sorry, I've solved my problem. So so what? But their deaths did upset me. I mean, I know, you know, people have got to die. We have to accept that. But you know, what I did in both those instances, I played tracks that I absolutely adored. I mean, for Bunny Wailer, it's Black Heart Man. So I get up, and that's the other thing. There's nobody in my flat. My daughter and granddaughter don't live with me. We're in touch, obviously, during pandemic through use of technology like this, phone, and very important. what do? I get up and dance around my flat to the music that I absolutely adore. Because we know, well, I know, we all, I think most people know that if you can dance around, it releases the endorphins. And we know the endorphins give us that injection of that lovely sense of happiness, and life can be tough, but hey, we can actually create a little bit of happiness in our souls, ourselves. If we've got, now that, I appreciate not everybody can do that, not everybody wants to do that, but these are the strategies that have really helped me. And one thing that I have done more because of the pandemic, and that's exercise. Well, also, come on, let's be honest, there's not much to do for somebody like me at the moment. I mean, yeah, there is. So I do this walk now, nearly an hour and a half, nearly 2 hours. I go up to a common and I just trek. I have my wellies on because it's been quite muddy. And I'm listening to my music, but I've also got into podcasts. So I think it's also exploring new things, you know, being prepared to listen to stuff that maybe you wouldn't have listened to, but you've actually got the time to listen to it, and you're trying to sort of keep your brain quite balanced. So those, and finally coming to the tools, recognizing where I'm talking about myself now, where I have some difficulties. Now, because I can look back, I'm not a psychiatrist and I'm not a psychologist, so, but I can realize that one of the areas I've had issues with, or difficulties in adapting, being patient, being tolerant, is with men.
Okay.
Let's lay it out there. I mean, I love men, don't get me wrong, I actually do. But I'm very intolerant the minute, and it comes from being physically abused by my stepfather for a short period. I'm sure that's the kernel of it, you know, and maybe also not having had a father figure growing up, that has to be another aspect. So I didn't grow up with the norms of, I didn't have a brother or sister that I grew up with, you know, all the things that I think do help us try to sort this out. Those were lacking. So I've had to come to terms that I've had difficulties in relationships and things like that, you know. So, and I think that's where I'm saying you have to just accept you can't have everything, and make the best of what you've got, and value, you know, I've got a daughter, I've got a granddaughter, I've got friends, you know. I'm just pulling stuff from my brain as I'm speaking, Dudley. So I hope this is helping.
No, that's what we want, is things to be natural to people, and I think that's one thing is really helpful.
I also, and I'm not preaching or anything, but I'm trying to look at how come, you know, I'm obviously I have aging issues like arthritis and things like that, underlying asthma. So that's why I had to go into lockdown a week earlier than the rest of the population. It was a year ago, isn't it? Now. So I'm conscious, high blood pressure, all managed, but that's where stress has affected me, I'm pretty sure. But I'm fortunate with my health background that I'm aware, and hopefully can see the signs. Listen to your body. I listen to my body, and I try and deal with it. And if as I've said, well, I think I've tried to say, is when I feel that depression coming on, that sadness, that overwhelming fear of helplessness, that feeling of lack of control with what's going on in society, the viciousness that people can display to other people, social media being, unfortunately, I like Twitter, but it gives you an eye on how nasty people can be.
Yeah.
And also the breakdowns individuals publicly have because of this. So when I feel those things, that's where I bring the toolbox in. And if I don't sleep well at night, I know that I'm going to sleep better the next night. I've gradually learnt that. So don't get worked up about it too much.
Well, I
so
think
hopefully that's some insight there.
That's an absolutely incredible insight of really your journey through life, maybe your toolbox, which I think everyone is probably want to try and have a sample of. If you've got that for sale, I think it's really key. I think in this day and age, during the pandemic, especially a lot of those in social care have been on the front line. There's been questions about the NHS giving higher priority and social care staff feel maybe left behind. And also as well, the recognition of how hard and what they have to go through. It's not just once you finish work, it continues going home, having to deal with families, friends, community, and as you mentioned, survival. And I think one of the reasons why I believe you're such an inspiration to me personally is because we can all have wonderful lives, but at the end of the day, you came through and have done marvelous things, and still, as you said, are here to tell the tale. And I guess the icing on the cake would be to everyone, and now you're been made a dame. So it's been recognized, all what you've gone through has been recognized by others as well. And I think we sometimes forget that what we're doing as a group. So, but I'd like to thank you very much, really, for joining us. I'd really ask very briefly, because we haven't got that much time, if there's anyone wants to ask any questions for you, and maybe you may have a few answers if there is anyone who wants to answer any questions. I think you've been very complete with everything you've done, and maybe I'll be your agent for the toolbox as well. Okay, so if Grace can unmute, please. She's got a hand raised.
Yes, I have. I've never heard of Elizabeth. This is my first time. And looking at through her eyes, I see a beautiful person. I see somebody who has inspired me, who has encouraged me. And I thank God I came on this program to meet this wonderful woman. Thank God for your life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. Did you have a question or a comment? I'd be happy to answer. Nothing's off the table, by the way.
If anyone wants to put anything in the chat or anything like that, that's please feel free to. Do you have any questions yourself? You like to anything you'd like to leave us with before you go? Because I think in social care, you have been in both areas of health visitor and in NHS. So what would you say to those who are in social care and really to make them feel valued? What can you press on? Well,
actually, my daughter is in social care. So she was an actress. She still does a little bit of acting, but she's in working in social care and studying for qualification in social care. So it's brought home to me very closely what the challenges are that she's facing. And I think it does get much lower publicity and attention than the NHS. And it's sad that it's only when it affects an individual. I mean, it is normal, unfortunately, but that people start to realize the value of social care. But in terms of the society and government, and in terms of pay and conditions and opportunities, I think it's going to be, we have had scandals emerging from this lack of attention in social care. And I think this is going to appear again and again and again. It's the Cinderella of society, and the curtains have been opened a little bit through the pandemic, but I still don't think society appreciates the stresses and strains within the social care movement, I would call it. And I would hope people might consider writing about it. Or I know it's difficult. It's all right. I mean, I didn't write my memoirs till I retired, but I think there are other ways. And I'm sure, I don't know the social care situation as well as I know the NHS. So it could be that this is happening. But I wonder what is needed to lift social care out of the Cinderella situation that it appears to me. You probably realize I don't know the situation very well, and I'm very hesitant to, I'm just talking as a mother of a daughter who works in social care.
Yeah. I've got just a few questions, for I know we haven't got long with you. So there was one question is, what's the one thing that you would say to a Black woman on International Women's Day to inspire us to press on?
So I shouldn't laugh, but it's press on. It's press on. It's just, but actually, it's to value yourself as a woman, and learn about. I'm sure you have, but learn about what women have contributed, are contributing to society, regardless of the challenges, and work with other women and allies of women to never allow. You know what cheered me up when I was looking on my phone this morning, seeing what gossip there was on Twitter? Apparently Piers Morgan walked out of GMB. I never watched the guy, I can't, you know, that's one of my coping strategies, is to avoid watching people who cause my blood pressure to go up. Sorry, but I'm being honest with you. Yeah. However, I find if I step back a bit and read other people's observations and the little news things, that sort of gets me there. It's to work, you can't deal with it all on your own. It's been a very painful lesson that I've had to learn. And it's the ability to open up with trusted friends and colleagues and allies. And maybe what I've said earlier, sometimes those allies are not the people that you would expect. So just don't allow society to blinker us. That's, I think, what I would suggest.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been really valuable. I think just your knowledge, your experience, and what you've achieved has really been inspirational, not just to me, but I hope to others as well. And it's really given us food for thought, and to think now when we leave here, everyone's going to be looking for a toolbox, and it doesn't refer to a hammer and chisel, but something else which you sort of shown can happen. So really thank and appreciate you joining us. And we will hope to see many more of you in the future, doing other sort of forms of media and so forth, because I think what you've done is really hugely inspirational to everyone.
Thank you very much. Can I do a little plug?
You can do indeed.
I'm asking permission first. So a publisher approached me about what was self-published memoirs in 2016. And so they're now coming out again in September through a mainstream publisher. And they're going to be called Dreams from My Mother. So I think as we're in International Women's Month, I think, I hope people might look out for it in September.
Well, I'll definitely be pushing and sharing it with my network as well and everyone around. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing us your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me. And don't forget what I said. I won't use the swear word again, but just.
Yeah, we'll beep it before, but don't worry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.